January 17th, 1940. The Isle of Bute, Scotland. The wind howls across the frozen waters of the Firth of Clyde, carrying with it the salt spray of a restless North Atlantic. In the pre-dawn darkness, 120 men stand in perfect silence on a rain-slicked pier, their faces painted black with boot polish, their hands wrapped around weapons that still feel unfamiliar in their grip. They are not soldiers in the traditional sense. Not yet. Some were clerks 3 months ago. Others were factory workers, university students, farmers who had never fired a rifle in anger. But tonight, they will become something the world has never seen before. British Commandos. Above them, the sky threatened snow. Before them, the dark silhouette of a Norwegian fjord waits across 400 miles of hostile sea. And in that fjord, protected by sheer cliffs and German sentries, sits a target that could decide the fate of the war itself. The year is 1940, and Europe is drowning in the shadow of Nazi conquest. Poland has fallen. France will collapse within months. Britain stands alone, her cities burning under Luftwaffe bombs, her armies driven into the sea at Dunkirk. But Churchill understands something that Hitler does not yet grasp, that this war will not be won by armies marching in parade formation, but by shadows striking in the night. The Prime Minister's directive is clear. Enterprises must be prepared with specially trained troops of the Hunter class who can develop a reign of terror down the enemy coast. The Commandos are born from this vision, a weapon forged not for holding ground but for destroying what the enemy believes cannot be destroyed. In occupied Norway, the Germans have built something they consider untouchable. The Vemork heavy water plant, perched on a mountainside above the town of Rjukan, produces deuterium oxide, a substance essential for nuclear research, for the creation of a bomb that can incinerate entire cities in an instant. British intelligence knows this. They know that every kilogram of heavy water flowing from those pipes brings Hitler one step closer to atomic weapons. The plant must be destroyed. But Vemork is not just a factory. It is a fortress, suspended on a cliff 700 feet above a gorge, accessible only by a single bridge, surrounded by minefields and searchlights and soldiers who believe the winter cold is their greatest ally. The Germans do not think anyone would dare attempt an assault. They are wrong. The men who board the transport ships that night expect a quick raid, a surgical strike followed by rapid extraction. They have trained for months in the Scottish Highlands, learning to climb frozen cliffs, to move without sound through snowdrifts, to kill with their bare hands if necessary. They have been told they are the best, the fastest, the most dangerous men Britain can produce. But none of them have experienced what awaits in Norway. Cold so profound it turns spit to ice before it hits the ground. Darkness so complete that compasses become useless. Mountains that swallow men whole without leaving a trace. They expect a fight. What they do not expect is nature itself to become their enemy. February 19th, 1941. Operation Claymore strikes the Lofoten Islands. 400 commandos obliterate fish oil factories, fueling the German war machine, capturing 200 prisoners and destroying 18,000 tons of shipping without losing a single man. The Germans are stunned. How did the British penetrate defenses that were supposed to be impregnable? The answer is simple. The Commandos do not fight like soldiers. They fight like Vikings returning to ancestral shores, like ghosts materializing from the sea. But Vemork remains untouched, too valuable to risk, too well defended to approach. Not until 1943 does the opportunity arrive. The Telemark region of Norway in winter is a place where God seems to have abandoned all mercy. Temperatures plunge to 20 below zero. Winds scream down the valleys with enough force to strip flesh from bone. The forest is a maze of frozen waterfalls and hidden crevasses, where a single misstep means death. Into this wilderness, on February 16th, 1943, 6 Norwegian commandos parachute as advanced scouts for Operation Gunnerside. They are sons of this land, men who grew up skiing these mountains, who know every path and stream. But even they are not prepared for betrayal, a familiar ground transformed into a killing field. For 4 days they cannot move, pinned down by blizzards so fierce that breathing becomes a calculated risk. They dig snow caves with bare hands. They eat moss and lichen. They watch their supplies dwindle to nothing and understand with creeping certainty that rescue will not come. They must reach Vemork or die trying. The German garrison at Vemork believes the plan is safe. Why wouldn't they? Intelligence reports confirm no army could cross the Vita Plateau in winter. The suspension bridge is guarded 24 hours. Minefields surround the facility. Searchlights sweep the approaches every 12 minutes. The only realistic threat would come from the air, and anti-aircraft guns ring the valley for precisely that reason. So the soldiers grow comfortable. They play cards in heated barracks. They drink schnapps smuggled from Oslo. They laugh about the British fools who thought they could stop German science. On the night of February 27th, they are still laughing when shadows begin moving up the gorge wall. 9 men, 6 Norwegians, and 3 British demolition experts make the climb. It takes 4 hours to ascend 700 feet, moving in absolute silence, fingers gripping rock so cold it tears skin away like paper. One man slips, catches himself on a frozen root, hangs suspended over oblivion for 30 seconds while his companions freeze in place, not daring to breathe. They carry 40-pound plastic explosives each, enough to level a building, but barely enough to damage Vemork's massive electrolysis chambers. They know this. They know that if they fail, another team will not come. There is no other team. This is the last chance. Below them, the Mana River thunders through the gorge, its sound covering any small mistake. Above them, light spills from factory windows where Norwegian workers labor under German supervision, producing the substance that could end the world. At 11:45 p.m., they reach the top. The facility sprawls before them. Pipes and tanks and concrete bunkers connected by a maze of catwalks. Guards patrol with dogs. But the Commandos have studied maps for months, memorizing every detail. They know which building holds the heavy water cells, which doors are locked, which windows can be opened without triggering alarms. The Norwegian resistance has provided exact specifications. Now comes the test. Can they move through an active military facility, plant explosives, and escape before anyone realizes what is happening? The lead commando, a man named Joachim Ronneberg, checks his watch. For hours. They have 4 hours until dawn, until the darkness that protects them dissolves into exposure and death. They move like water flowing through cracks, through a gate left unlocked by a sympathetic Norwegian worker, down a cable tunnel that bypasses the main entrance, into the heart of the plant where the electrolysis chambers hum with electrical current. The cells are huge, stainless steel cylinders containing thousands of liters of heavy water, irreplaceable equipment that took years to build. The Commandos work with surgical precision. They place charges not randomly, but strategically, targeting structural points that will cascade the explosion, ensuring maximum destruction with minimum explosives. They wrap the charges in sausage-shaped coils designed to direct the blast inward. They set 30-second fuses, long enough to allow escape, short enough to prevent discovery. And then, at 1:15 a.m. on February 28th, they light the fuses and vanish back into the tunnel. The explosion rips through Vemork with a sound like God tearing steel. The electrolysis chambers rupture, spilling heavy water across the floor in a toxic flood. Pipes shatter. Concrete cracks. Alarms shriek into night as German soldiers pour from barracks, rifles raised, shouting orders in confusion. But the Commandos are already gone, already descending the gorge wall in a controlled fall that is half climb, half suicide. Behind them, flames leap from shattered windows. The plant, Hitler's pathway to atomic weapons, is crippled, its production halted for months, its deuterium oxide washing into the Mana River like blood from a mortal wound. And the Germans, searching desperately through the facility, find only the spent fuses and realize with dawning horror that the impossible has occurred. The extraction is chaos. The Commandos split into pairs, each taking a different escape route across the Vida Plateau toward neutral Sweden. Some ski 300 miles in 10 days, living on melted snow and dried fish. Others steal bicycles and ride through German checkpoints, their forged papers somehow passing inspection. One man walks into a farmhouse and asks for food. The farmer, recognizing him as British, feeds him and sends him on his way without a word to the occupation forces. The German response is massive. 5,000 troops comb the mountains, roadblocks seal every village, aircraft patrol the border, but they are hunting shadows. By March 15th, every commando has reached safety. Not one is captured. Not one is killed. The mission is perfect. In Berlin, the Reich's nuclear scientists receive the news with despair. The Vemork heavy water is irreplaceable. Alternative production sites cannot match its output. The German atomic program, already lagging behind the Allies, has suffered a blow from which it will never recover. Hitler rages, demands answers, executes intelligence officers for their failure. But the damage is done. The war will not be decided by wonder weapons. It will be decided by men willing to climb frozen cliffs in the dark, by those who understand that victory belongs not to the strongest, but to the most determined. In the years that follow, the Vemork raid becomes legend. Military historians study it as the perfect special operations mission, bold in conception, flawless in execution, devastating in impact. But the men who were there remember something else. They remember the cold that turned their breath to ice. They remembered the weight of explosives on their backs as they climbed. They remember lighting fuses in a building surrounded by enemies and walking away as if they had all the time in the world. And they remember the strange, almost sacred silence of the Norwegian wilderness after the explosion faded, as if the mountains themselves had witnessed something extraordinary and were holding their breath in recognition. The heavy water that spilled from Vemork's shattered chambers flowed into the Mana River and eventually reached the sea, diluted beyond recovery, lost forever. With it went Hitler's atomic dreams. The Commandos had struck not just a factory, but an idea. The idea that technology alone could win wars, that fortifications could substitute for vigilance, that the darkness held nothing to fear. They proved that 120 men with courage and precision could accomplish what 10,000 conventional soldiers could not. They demonstrated that freedom, when cornered, does not simply defend, it attacks. Today, the Vemork plant stands as a museum, its electrolysis chambers preserved as monuments to the night when shadows climb from the gorge and change history. Visitors walk the same halls where Commandos plant explosives, stand at the windows where German guards should have been watching but weren't, gaze down at the river that still thunders through the canyon 700 feet below. And perhaps, if the wind is right and the night is dark enough, they can imagine what it felt like to be one of those men, carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders, knowing that failure meant not just death, but the possible destruction of everything, and choosing to climb anyway. The lesson of Vemork is not about tactics or technology. It is about the human will. The refusal to accept that some targets are untouchable, that some enemies are invincible, that darkness and cold and fear are reasons to surrender. The Commandos understood what the Germans did not, that the greatest fortress is only as strong as the courage of those who defend it, and the smallest force, properly applied, can topple empires. They went into Norway expecting a raid. They came out having struck a blow that echoed across continents in decades, proving that even in humanity's darkest hour, there are always men willing to climb into the night and light the fuse.